So I have an iPhone, and apparently after updating the iOS 11, YouTube Capture doesn't even work on it right now. So I'm just going to record it, and then I'll have to put it on my computer and upload it. This kind of defeats the whole point of the whole whatever. So anyway, I went to A&W. I'm here. I went to A&W. It was over there. I had an interview, and I wanted to do a little quick thoughts situation. I wanted to talk about the Cyanide and Happiness show. Now, many of you may not think of the Cyanide Happiness show when you think of Cyanide and Happiness, and that's because Cyanide and Happiness is like the internet shorts and comics and cartoons and stuff that you see a lot on the internet. So you see, I'm gonna eat some fries while I'm doing this. Hang on, I'm gonna tear this. Oh, it tore. Boom, fries. Convenient. Okay, zoom in on the beard. That's good. Okay, so Cyanide and Happiness show basically was kickstarted back in 2014 or so, maybe 2015, and it's basically a 15-minute or so episode. And there's 3 seasons now. There's 30 episodes. Well, 31. But each episode is around 15 minutes, and originally it was all episodic. So like in season 1, there was an episode of like a guy goes into a bar and like here's this crazy story from like a pirate man, and it's like, whoa, all these adventures. Or like in season 2, there's this episode that was kind of like a musical about this guy who's building train tracks and wants to make the train do a loop-de-loop, but it doesn't work. So just dumb stuff, right? Dumb stuff. It's basically like a Cyanide and Happiness short or comic, just expanded into a 15-minute thing. But the reason why I want to talk about this now, the season 3, is because season 3, unlike all the other ones, and season 2 had a little bit of serial elements, but this is like fully serialized. This is like South Park season 20 level of serialization. The difference is, unlike South Park season 20, this one's actually really good. I was really impressed with how this season panned out and what they did. I'm gonna turn off the ignition because I don't like idling the car, so I'm just gonna keep the AC going here. Yeah, get the AC going and just not have the car running. That's smart. Good job, Matt. Basically, season 3, it had a bunch of different plot lines kind of all happening at once. But there are some really, really powerful episodes in this that I wanted to mention real quick and just give my thoughts on and encourage you to see it. It's a little after show content here, plugging it, going into the reviews thing again. At this interview I was just at, I literally talked about the reviews video, and they're like, "What are you doing?" But like, it's fine. It worked out, probably. Anyway, so there's one episode in particular that was like the depressing episode, and it was the whole season title was, so that now that's what I call blah, and because they did that in season 2 with the word TOO in there for every episode. So this one was, now that's what I call a depressing story or something like that, right? And it was the story, right, of the guy in the intro that like goes, you know, when it goes da 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 da. It's like the guy that comes in, hangs on his hat, and then strips to his underwear and spins around and hits the computer and shocks himself. It's like his story of like, and his dad comes back because his dad was like this alcoholic maniac, and he's like, oh, I've changed, I'm sober. But then he goes and raids the liquor cabinet, and then the guy's so sad, and then he's an alcoholic, and then he drinks and he crashes into this other car that's like relevant to another story, because it's like, oh, this is how this happened. So it was really good, really, really well done. I was really impressed with that episode. And then I was also really impressed with the 2 episodes that was like, that's what I call these guys and that's what I call those guys. And one of them was basically the superheroes that we've seen in some of the shorts and some of the other episodes of the show, like El Reverso or the Star Spangled Bastard, or some other, there's like the mom with like the baby that like turns into the Hulk when her baby's hurt. It's really funny. So anyway, what they were fighting in that episode is basically this corporate monster thing by this company called Paintech. And Paintech is like the recurring... Paintech's like the recurring villain in this whole thing. And basically they advertise at the beginning of the season, they're like, buy a pain bot. It feels pain. And that's like all it is, but it's kind of like... But people actually buy it, and people like obsess over it, and so it's kind of like a commentary on people obsessing over objects instead of like their own things, and those objects just deliver pain to people, but it doesn't matter. And it's also a commentary on how, like, corporations basically profit from people suffering. And they actually use the news as a big example of this, which I, as a journalism major, found particularly powerful. So there's this one episode where, like, the news anchor gets, like, promoted to Payne Tech's new news division or whatever, because all the corporations own everything now, right? And he's just reporting on really depressing stories. He's like, I can't do this anymore. And then he goes and meets his idol news guy, and the idol news guy's like, you just gotta report on it, man. You can't even think about it. But then he does think about it, and then his like reporter, like his field reporter that he fired, comes back and is like, ooh, I locked the car. That's fun. His field reporter comes back and is like, we gotta report on Payne Tech. And then, of course, that doesn't work out because it doesn't work out, right? So that whole Payne Tech arc basically was about selling the Payne bots, but then it was also like it tied a bunch of other things together. So Payne Tech took over this guy who was like a scientist who wanted to build a wormhole, and he built a wormhole, and the wormhole ended up being like super tiny. So then there's a joke of like, oh, this is not just a wormhole, it's also a glory wormhole. You know, they gotta do the dick joke. So then that happens, and then he gets all crippled because some crazy stuff happens. But in the episode now, that's what I call these guys. I'm pretty sure it's these guys, not those guys, but I'm pretty sure it's these guys. And that's basically this wheelchaired man who used to be the scientist obsessed with wormholes. I have to say it that way because that's how he says it. Wormhole. It turns into this giant monster, and so they go and fight him. And that's a cool thing. But basically what happens is over time the story develops such that all of the things, so like each episode was like its own story, right? But then as you get into episodes like 9 and 10, then it's like all of the stories start to come together, and you start to realize the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is really cool. My only real criticism of this season, now I'm not going to go into specifics, I'm not going to take too long because I actually need to start driving and drive back to my school, the thing that bugs me about this season is the last episode, and it's kind of the problem I mentioned in my South Park video, which isn't on YouTube still, but I did dispute it again, so hopefully, you know, who knows. Basically, the last episode kind of just does a little cop-out. It doesn't really solve any of the problems. It's just like, oh, and now instead of building a wormhole, I've built a plot hole, and then it's just all these crazy things happen, and then it's like, oh, well, El Reverso, because he does things in reverse, because that's the joke, he like pushes him into the plot hole, and then he goes back and like undoes everything or something. So, and then I don't know, I didn't like it. I thought it was kind of a cop-out. The one part of the ending that I did like, though, is that there was one joke, like, in the middle of the season. It's like, oh, this Paint Tech is going out of business because of Payne Tech, right? But then at the end of the season, it's like, well, in the world where Payne Tech doesn't become successful, Paint Tech does, and then they're the new big corporation. So the comment is that basically it isn't just the multi-million-dollar corporations that exist today, it's also the multi-million-dollar corporations that will exist tomorrow. And I thought that was particularly poignant. So the point is that Cyanide and Happiness is good at comedy, right? They're really good at comedy, but I think that this proves that they're also really good at satire. They're good at making a statement about things that are happening in our world and using their ridiculous comedy to do it. And it also proves that you don't need, like, super relatable main characters. You can just have quirky characters play out a plot line, and you can still relate to it. And I thought that was particularly well done as well. So that's that. I backed the adventure game they're doing on Kickstarter. They're doing some great work, and I really think that they deserve more credit than they're getting. So that's all I got. Peace.